Anyways, okay, this is my presentation, and then this is my audience. Have you ever stopped to think about how many more years of life our Earth has left? Well, if all of us living here on Earth don't work together in reducing our carbon footprints, then life on Earth will be ceasing at a much faster rate than you could ever imagine. Today, I'll be talking about what exactly our carbon footprint is, and then I'll tell you what you all can do to help reverse the impacts of carbon emissions. As an Earth System Sustainability major here at UNA, reducing our carbon footprint and helping fight climate change is something that I'm passionate about, and I learn new information every day. With the help from my sustainable background and some really informative, noteworthy articles, I think that this combined will allow me to give you all a great presentation today. I'm going to be discussing how our carbon footprint affects our planet, specifics that we can all collectively do to help reverse the damage, and then I'll talk about the outcomes of changing versus not changing our lifestyles to being less carbon-based. All of us can easily reduce our carbon footprints by switching up our daily routines. Just by changing eating habits, recycling more, and changing utility use such as water and electricity, we can all have significant impacts in reducing our carbon footprints. We'll begin by getting into the specifics about carbon footprints and what that actually is. A person's carbon footprint is defined by the total amount of carbon dioxide and other carbon compounds given off as a waste byproduct of fossil fuel usage of one person. According to ShrinkThatFootprint.com, the average carbon footprint per household of a family living here in Florence is equivalent to 52.3 metric tons of carbon waste. The problem is that we as a society have become way too dependent on fossil fuels, and our carbon dioxide emissions are skyrocketing, which results in the warming of our planet and an overall change in its climate. The reason we must take action, and what makes this pertain to all of us, is that we all live here on Earth. If we don't take responsibility for our problems and agree to work towards solutions, we will push our planet to an inhabitable state and the human race will have nowhere to go. Therefore, yes, everyone should be concerned about their carbon footprint. If the situation is not resolved in the future, we may have to forcibly make drastic lifestyle changes caused by the consequence of our carbon pollution. That is to say, we'll be forced to adapt to living in a dirty planet. Don't worry too much yet though. As I mentioned before, we can all make simple changes to help reduce our carbon waste and prevent the Earth from perishing. Enough talk about all the scary stuff. Let's get on to talk about what we can do to fix the issue and actually reduce our carbon waste. A few of the easiest and simple ways we can all reduce our carbon footprints are by changing our eating habits, recycling more, and reducing home and water electric usage. When it comes to eating, I specifically want to talk about how much food we're throwing away. Look at a statistic taken from the carbon footprint of Danish diets. Approximately 1/3 of the human influence on climate change and land use is related to dietary choices and the food production chain alone. Decomposing food releases an abundance of methane, which is one of the greenhouse gases that is aiding into changing the Earth's climate. By being conscious of what we put on our plates and trying not to waste food, this fix is sure to reduce our carbon footprints. Plastic pollution is also a huge issue, plus we must also take into account all the pollution that's a byproduct of producing these plastic products. In an article published by TCE, they claim that the data shows by 2050, carbon pollution from plastic production will take up to 15% of the global carbon allowance. What you can do at home is to recycle anything and everything that you can keep out of the environment and oceans. And from a mass level, it would be wise to start pushing for your government to put regulations on plastic production, because cutting it from the source is key. The easiest suggestion out of the three I've made is probably this last one. If the others seem like big changes, this could be like the baby step. Too often we lose track of how much water and electricity we all use. An article by Star Journal in British Columbia wrote about a day dedicated people to urging minimal electricity use. This is a great idea, and we could also do that in the United States. By doing small things like turning lights off when you leave the room and cutting water off when you're brushing your teeth, or even taking shorter showers, we can easily work towards a more sustainable life. Our goal here is to reduce our carbon footprint, right? The plan I've laid out are a few ways we can each reduce the amount of carbon we create. Since all three of these methods obviously would result in less carbon, I would call it a successful plan. Let's take a look at these slides here while I discuss how our world would look with these adaptive lifestyle changes and without making changes. The first two possible outcomes in this situation are very simple. First, let's say we adapt these habits and work on reducing our carbon footprints. The results of this would be a much cleaner Earth overall. Air quality would be fantastic, and overall reducing our carbon waste will prolong the life of our planet. This should be what we strive for as humans, as we should want to live in a cleaner environment. Now, if we all choose to ignore the warning signs and continue releasing carbon at the rates we are now, we're looking at a much different outcome than the last. Constantly smoggy skies, greenery disappearing, and just an overall dirty world. This is exactly what everyone should want to prevent from happening, and why would you want to create a nasty environment for your children to live in? Another point I would like to add in here is that it's okay to say we're wrong about climate change and everything. If we still make these changes and reduce carbon emissions, and maybe climate change ends up being false, what is the worst that can happen? Oh, we created a cleaner environment? Wow, that's terrible. Not really, right? So before I conclude everything, let's take a look back at the key points. Humans alone are causing too much carbon pollution and leaving a big carbon footprint. Looking at an article called Climate Basics for Kids, we learned that carbon alone covers over 82% of all the greenhouse gases. By just reducing carbon numbers, we can make noticeable difference here. Together, we need to team up and collectively pledge to reduce food waste, plastic pollution, and utility usage towards reversing the negative effects from pollution to make our environment a more sustainable one. As the audience, I've already laid out the steps for you, so this should be easy to take action. Don't waste food, recycle your plastics, and just turn the lights and water off when you're not using it. I hope you all take my suggestions into consideration and try to reduce your own carbon footprints. Remember this, do you want to raise your children and grandchildren in a world where they can run and play while it's pretty outside with blue skies? Or do you want to have to remind your little ones to put on surgical masks before they play outside just so they don't inhale too much smog? Thank you.